Welcome to Spectral Shadows. This is the place where the stories don't just haunt your mind, they follow you into the dark. Before the whispers begin, tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it? Midnight? Or closer to the hour when shadows move on their own? If you're brave enough to continue, prove it. Like this video, subscribe to Spectral Shadows and leave a comment with your time and location, so we'll know exactly where to find you. Now, let's open the door to tonight's nightmare. Story number 1. We moved to the country for peace. At least that's what I thought. The house was old, 2 stories, white paint flaking off its sides like dried skin. The porch sagged. A single wind chime clinked, even when there was no wind. Behind it, 30 feet of yard, and then the woods, a wall of bark and shadow that swallowed the sun by afternoon. May said it was nice and quiet. She was a writer. She ate shit like this up. It started with a fox, late October. The leaves were bone dry, and the sky looked peeled open. May spotted it near the tree line, limping, narrow as a branch, eyes hollow. The next night she left out food scraps, just in case she's hungry, May said, batting her baby blues at me. Just this once. This quickly became a daily ritual. By November, she'd bought bulk dog food and stored it in a plastic container with a blue snap-tight lid. Except she was always too busy to take it out herself. So, it became my responsibility. Every night I'd carry it out to this rotten stump and leave it with the lid off. By morning, something had knocked it over and picked it clean. Routine, until the container started disappearing. I would walk out and find the lid and nothing else. At first it was rare. We would scratch our heads and May would buy another one. We joked about it. Raccoons, coyotes, a starving skinwalker. But the more consistently it happened, the more annoyed May became. Her eyes lingered sometimes on those woods. "I want to know," she said. "I gotta know." Why? I was standing behind her while she worked on her laptop, fingers firing away at keys. "I can't focus," May said, "unless I figure this out. Whatever floats your boat." She bought a trail camera, cheap, night vision, motion detection. She insisted it would pay for itself in satisfaction. The first night we set it up, she asked me to seal the lid. If it's shut, the thing'll have to fumble it open. That'll guarantee the camera picks it up. I didn't like her referring to it as a thing. "Animal," I corrected as she adjusted the angle of the camera. "Whatever." I carried it out, clicked the lid shut and left it there like bait. The next morning, it was gone, and the camera was facing the sky. "What?" May stormed out into the yard. "What happened? Maybe an owl hit it," I suggested. "No," she snapped, fidgeting with her phone. "I'm checking the footage." I made coffee while May fast-forwarded through hours of footage on her phone. "It just turns," she shouted from the living room. "Over the course of an hour, it slowly turns up." I glanced out the kitchen window, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I'll buy another one." "Are you?" My voice faltered. Through the window I saw it. The container was there on the edge of the woods, a twisted and broken piece of plastic. It wasn't there a moment ago. Something was out there. "May," I said, "maybe we should stop putting food out." Silence. I looked over my shoulder into the living room. May was on the couch, staring at her phone. Her expression was blank. "May?" May straightened and looked up. "What are you talking about?" "The container is out there." "Huh?" She hurried into the kitchen when I didn't answer, spotting the container. "When did that get there?" She ran from the kitchen, appearing in the backyard a moment later. She ran across the open, ponytail bouncing. I stared, something twisting in my stomach. It was out there, the thing. She slowed to a stop, kneeling over the container. She picked it up and waved it in the air. "Come back," I whispered. "Hurry up." Behind May, the trees rustled. She stood and ran back to the house, mangled container in hand. Later that day, she went shopping. She came home with a new container and an extra camera. This camera was more expensive. She didn't tell me the specs of it. "I'll set it up so they're within view of each other," she said. "That way, whatever moved it last time can't do it again without being seen." That night, May put the food out herself. I sat on the couch, staring at the mangled container on the coffee table. It looked like it had been twisted until it simply came apart. When May came inside, she looked content. "I miss the city," I said as she joined me on the couch. "The city is for pussies," May said, kicking the mangled container. "It's too expensive." My gaze lingered on the container. "What do you think did that?" "I think it's wolves." I peeled my eyes off the container and gawked at her. "Wolves? May, you're joking." "Nope. I think there are wolf people out there. They must be struggling to find game if they're scrounging for dog food in people's backyards." She devolved into laughter as she said it. I wasn't even smiling. May's brown eyes lit up. "Come on," she said, taking my hand. "You want to sit out here and stew about torn-up plastic, or do you want to have sex?" I let her lead me to the bedroom, but I couldn't get it out of my head. Were May's eyes always brown? The next morning, May was gone when I woke up. I found her in the backyard, standing over an empty container. "May?" I lingered in the door. May's head rose slowly, facing the woods. Her mouth was moving. Her hair shifted in a soft breeze. The trees danced before her. I stepped further out, squinting in the fresh daylight. "Where are you going?" May popped out of the house behind me, holding her phone. I jumped, whirling on her. "May, but..." I looked back to the woods, finding nothing but an empty food container. "It's empty," May said. "I already checked. Let's see the footage." "May," I said, injecting as much steel into my voice as I could manage. "I just saw you outside. Where have you been?" May cocked an eyebrow at me. "I've been on the couch for 10 minutes, she said. "I literally watched you zombie walk to the door and stand there, slack-jawed like an idiot." I stared at her. Was I half asleep? No. I knew what I saw. Maybe it was someone who happened to look like May, wearing the exact same outfit. "Come on," May groaned. "I want to see the footage. You coming or what?" I stiffly followed her to the couch as she pulled up the camera app on her phone, away, watching her. She didn't look up. "What's wrong?" We watched the first camera's footage first. The video started ordinarily. A possum, wind-moving branches. Then at 2:43 a.m., the screen glitched. A splice. Like something had stitched itself into the feed. Tall and thin. Arms that ended in stumps. Its body was static, as if the footage was being burned where he stood. Where its head should have been, there was a fan. A wide, spiraling crest of human eyes, each moving on its own. Some bloodshot, some glassy, some wet and oozing pus. Then one by one, they turned. Each eye settled on the camera. They stared. We stared. Neither of us spoke. One of the eyes grew closer, the pupils splitting apart as it filled up the camera. It was familiar to me. I couldn't place how. Then the feed cut out. A crack zipped across May's phone. She yelped and dropped it. I couldn't speak. May was grinning. What was she grinning about? "May, we found it," she said. "I got it on video." "May, what the fuck are you talking about?" "It saw me. It saw us, don't you understand?" I stood slowly, backing away from her. May barked a laugh, raising both hands to her face. My blood ran cold. Now it'll know. It'll see us wherever we are. We'll always be seen. There was a knock on the door, and I screamed. May laughed again. I looked from her to the door, trying to keep my breathing steady. Another knock. A shadow moved across the curtained window. "Come on," May said. "This is what I've been waiting for. We've been out here for months. Finally." "May, are you serious right now?" "Shut up. The good part's happening." I was trembling where I stood. The shadow returned to the window, tall and shifting, the part that should be its head split, spreading out like a fan. Another knock. The door rattled. May stood and approached the window. "Don't you want to know?" she asked, peeling the curtain back. "Aren't you curious?" I closed my eyes. I couldn't tell you why I did it. It was just a reflex, like a child flinching when a parent shouts. Silence. A strange warmth. Glass shattered. When I opened my eyes, May was gone, and a food container sat on the floor by the window. Inside, it was a single blue eye staring up at me. Story number 2. I used to think that walking home late at night was calming. The streets were quieter, the city's noise folded down to a low hum, and the lamps made the sidewalks look softer. I learned the rhythm of my route by heart. There was a coffee shop with a neon sign that blinked every other minute, a corner where 3 different smells met and argued, and an alley with graffiti that never changed. Nothing exciting, but it felt safe. That changed last Tuesday. I had stayed later than I wanted at a group project. The train came and went without me because I was sorting a file. So I decided to walk. It was maybe 20 minutes, same route I had taken hundreds of times. My phone had 1 bar and an exhausted battery, but I told myself I did not need to call anyone. I put my earbuds in, turned the music down so I could still hear the world, and started walking. A few minutes in, I noticed something odd. My steps were the only sound for a bit. Then another set of steps joined in behind me. Not loud, not close, just there. I looked back, thinking I would see someone walking a dog or a couple laughing, but the street was empty. The lampposts cast long cones of yellow light, and the spaces between them were familiar pockets of shadow. No one walked in those pockets. I shrugged. Maybe a delivery guy had taken a different turn. I kept walking. The steps matched my pace, steady and even. When I slowed, they slowed. When I quickened, they quickened. It felt like walking with a metronome I could not turn off. I turned my head more than once, and the shape of the street behind me remained the same. There was no silhouette, no shadow, nothing that looked like a person. Then I saw the coat. It was hung over a garbage bin by the coffee shop window, a dark coat with a raised collar. It should have been empty, a piece of clothing someone left. But something about the way the fabric lay made it read like it had shoulders, the bend of a neck. For a second I convinced myself it was a jacket on a hanger. Then the jacket slid. Not across the pavement, not in a wind. It shifted like someone settling into it. I stopped. The footsteps stopped with me. I told myself this was ridiculous. I told myself I had stayed up too late, that my brain was making patterns where there were none. I checked my phone. 40%. Fine. I started walking again. Slower this time. The music louder so it could fill the space where nerves wanted to live. The steps returned. I took a different street, the kind that cuts between 2 blocks and saves you 3 minutes. The shortcut had a row of hedges and a single working lamp. I always passed it at this hour because a cab would sometimes park nearby, and the driver would sleep with the radio on. Tonight there was no cab, no radio, only the lamp and the hedges. The footsteps sounded behind me like someone walking on a sidewalk that existed only for them. When I glanced over my shoulder, I saw a figure reflected in the lit window of a closed shop. The reflection was only the suggestion of someone, a smear of dark that matched me step for step. It did not have the structure of a real person. It was like seeing yourself in water that someone was pulling the surface of. I do not know what made me do it. Maybe it was panic or curiosity or both. I stopped and turned around fully, standing with my back straight and my feet planted. The air felt thicker, like someone had closed the distance between me and the night. Nothing moved in the alley. Nobody stepped into the light. The coat on the garbage bin remained dirtied and empty. Then the first step landed behind me, right against the lip of my shoe. Not a second after, close enough that the vibration felt through the concrete. I did not feel threatened exactly. I felt watched in the old animal way you get when something that should be separate becomes close. I said, "Hey, can you stop? I'm going home." The voice that answered was not a voice I heard. It was the knowledge that the footsteps had stopped because I had spoken. And then from somewhere behind the hedges, something moved, and a shadow folded across the lamp's light, eating the space where the path should be. I turned and ran. The sound of my own breath came down hard in my throat. I passed the coffee shop where the coat had been, and the coat was gone. The neon sign flickered like a blink. My phone, which had been calm a moment before, flashed low battery and then black. I fumbled with keys, swearing, hands shaking. My front door was stubborn. My neighbor had a key and always left the lock a little sticky. I jammed my thumb in the key, turned, and the door opened with a sound that felt loud enough to be heard down the whole block. I slammed it, leaned my back against it, and slid down to sit on the floor. The city sounded normal. The bus on the main road whooshed in the distance. A couple laughed 2 houses over. I told myself I was safe now. That night I slept in fits. Each time I woke, I could not move for a second because I was waiting for the sound I had learned to expect. Steps behind me, slow and patient. They never came. At dawn, I went to work, like nothing had happened, because what else do you do when you are 19 and your rent is due and you need to be useful? Over the next 3 days, I altered my routes, walked with other people, and avoided the coffee shop altogether. The steps followed none of those changes. They seemed tied to me like a shadow that had a mind. I would be in line at the grocery store, and the sound of footsteps would drift through my head the way an old song does. It was never loud, never urgent, but always precise in its timing. On the 4th night, I forgot to take my umbrella and it started to rain. The city smelled different with rain on the asphalt, cleaner. I walked slowly because the slick pavement took trust. Near the corner where the alley cut through, a man in a bright jacket stood under the same lamp I had passed before. He was holding a paper cup and staring at his phone. When I walked by, he did not look at me. He never did. The steps began again. They kept time. I walked to the crosswalk and waited for the signal. The man in the jacket walked up to the curb, matching his pace to mine, and then he stopped. He did not cross. He stood 2 meters away from me and stared at his phone until the walk signal blinked. When we crossed, he turned down a different street and disappeared into an open doorway. I did not see where he went beyond that. Later, in the shower, I realized the skin at the back of my neck was raised where a collar press might have been. I cannot say if something touched me that night or if I had imagined the pressure, because fear can copy feeling as well as any hand can. But since then, the steps have changed. I can only hear them when I am standing still. They come when I am alone in a room and waiting for the kettle to boil, when my headphones are in and the world has become private. When I move, they stop. When I stop, they begin. I tried to tell someone, laughed off the first 2 attempts. The third time I explained to my friend exactly how it felt, and he said, "Sleep deprivation, man. Get some rest." I still hear them. Last week I walked to the subway with my jacket buttoned to my chin and my head down. A woman on the platform asked me the time, and I told her, and she smiled and said, "Thank you," and that was that. When the train came, she boarded, and I took my spot at the back of the car. The doors closed, and the lights hummed. I looked at my reflection in the window, and for a single second, I saw another reflection behind me in the glass, exactly the same height and shape as mine, but darker, as if someone had stood just off camera. I turned. The car was empty except for a sleeping man in a suit. When I looked back at the window, the other reflection was gone. My breath fogged the glass, and a drop of condensation slid across where that shadow's face might have been. I cannot say why it follows me or what it wants. I can only say the rules seem simple. It keeps distance, it keeps time, and it only appears when I am still. For now I am trying not to stand in quiet places too long. I keep the kettle on until it whistles. I walk to my bus stop at a brisk pace. I take calls on the sidewalk, and every so often when the city gets very quiet, and I am pretending that nothing is different, I hear a set of steps that match mine. They do not come closer. They do not speak. They are patient and precise, like someone practicing how to be invisible. If you ever walk home and you hear a pair of steps behind you that always match your speed, do not stop to look for a face. Keep walking. Keep your phone alive. Keep moving. It feels selfish to say it, but I would rather live with the feeling of being followed than find out what happens when I stand still. Story number 3. "Hey, don't let Satan out," she yelled as I opened my apartment door, arms full of groceries. That's when I saw him there in the hallway, a skinny mutt with that sad, shelter dog look in his eyes. He walked slowly, curious. Then the neighbor, this woman in her 70s who walked with a limp, came rushing over and gently scolded him for sneaking out. "Your dog's name is Satan?" I asked, without even thinking if it sounded rude. She laughed and said, "Yeah." Said she knew it made people raise their eyebrows, but that was the name on his tag. The building superintendent had found him about a week earlier, wandering around the street. He tried to track down the original owner since there was a collar, but no luck. So he asked if she wanted to take him in. After telling me the whole story, she tugged his leash and led him back inside, but the dog kept looking at me, wouldn't stop staring. Over the next few days, I saw Satan here and there. When she walked him, or when she accidentally left her door open, and he wandered the hallway again. Every time I ran into him, he came right up to me like he wanted something. His eyes were wide and sad, too sad. Something about them felt off. One morning, I left early for the gym before work. As I stepped out of my apartment, I heard a sound, like a scream, but weird. It was low and drawn out, like someone running out of breath. It was coming from the neighbor's place. I knocked on her door and asked if everything was okay. No answer. The sound kept going. I tried the handle and it burned my hand. That's when I saw smoke coming from the cracks. The noise woke up the rest of the floor, and a few of us busted the door open. We found her in the living room, sitting in her chair, on fire, but not like a house fire. The flames weren't spreading. They were only on her, burning her skin away while she just sat there, silent now. The smell hit me hard. I still gag when I think about it. Satan wasn't anywhere in the apartment. No one could explain how the fire started. The cops said something about her phone and the chair being super flammable, but no one really bought it. I kept wondering where the dog had gone, even though I figured that was the end of it. But 2 days later, coming home from work, I heard the sound of paws heading my way. I turned around, and there was Satan, standing right next to me with the same eyes as before. Right behind him, holding his leash, was this middle-aged accountant I kind of knew by sight. He lived alone on the second floor and was a short guy who was always squinting like his glasses weren't doing their job. Bit of an oddball. I asked how he found the dog, and he said the super had found him a couple days ago, curled up by a trash can outside, scared and starving. "And do you still call him Satan?" I asked, eyeing the tag still hanging from his collar. "Of course, that's his name," he said with a shrug. That bugged me, not gonna lie. Just change the damn name. I didn't dwell on it too much and got on with my life. Until a few days later at lunch, some co-workers started talking about a horrible accident that happened the day before. Some guy's car exploded the moment he turned the keys on. Fire engulfed the whole thing for nearly half an hour, even with firefighters on the scene. One of them showed me a video someone had taken on their phone while walking past it, and you can't imagine the shock I felt when I realized it was the accountant in that car. Flames wrapped the car completely, and inside the man let out a low, endless scream, just like the neighbor. I spent the whole day trying to make sense of what happened and what the dog had to do with it, but nothing fit. That night, when I went down to take out the trash, I was stunned to see a teenage girl holding Satan on a leash with her father behind her. "We named him Duke. The super gave him to us today," said the owner abandoned him. The father explained. It's always been her dream to have a dog. She looked so happy, and at least they'd changed the name. But after what I'd seen, I couldn't leave that dog in their hands. I pretended to be his real owner, said I demanded they give it to me, and even threatened to call the cops. The girl started crying, and I hated doing it, but it was for her own good. I left with the dog and brought him into my apartment. I'll be honest, I was scared as hell I'd end up like the others. But the second he walked in, he just sat in a corner, staring at me with those same sad eyes. At first I was afraid, then I started feeling sorry for him. Then I had an idea. Maybe the super knew more about the dog since he was the one who found him. I left Satan alone and went to knock on the super's door, knocked 3 times, and nothing. Then I heard it, that same weird scream, low and constant. I'd heard at my neighbor's place, and again in that video. I grabbed the doorknob and opened it, surprised it wasn't locked. But the apartment was empty, and the noise stopped. There wasn't even any furniture in the place, just a desk by the window with a couple of pens, and this big old book open on it. Something about it pulled me in, and I walked over to look at the page. It was just names, one after another. The last 2 I recognized as the old woman and the accountant. I was about to flip the page when I heard a noise behind me and nearly jumped out of my skin. The super was standing at the door, staring me down. "What do you think you're doing?" he asked. I tried to explain, said I heard something and got worried, said I came because of the dog. "As far as I know, he's your problem now," he said, and his tone made it clear the father called him in a not-so-nice way. "So get out of my apartment." I nodded and started walking out. But right as I got into the hallway, he called out again, laughing. "Everyone thinks it's the dog's name," he said, between chuckles. "What?" I asked, confused. "The tag on the collar, that's not the dog's name," he continued. "It's the owner's." Then he slammed the door in my face. That was yesterday, and I barely slept last night. I stayed up for hours digging through forums, random videos, anything I could find online that might explain what this dog is or what I'm supposed to do with him. But the thing that's really messing with my head is how he keeps staring at me all the time, and I'm starting to notice weird stuff now. Like the way he limps, just like the old lady did. Or the way he sometimes wrinkles his nose like he's squinting to see better, just like the accountant. Maybe I'm losing it from the lack of sleep, but I swear to God, when I look into his eyes, I see someone begging for help. It's the same look I saw in the neighbor's burning eyes when I burst through her door. Story number 4. Jail really sucks. I just got out, they released me, but I still have to stand trial, and that moment in court was just the arraignment. I didn't know what that meant until I was standing there in court, hands cold, trying not to look at anyone. The prosecutor read out the charge, voyeurism in the first degree. It sounded worse than I'd imagined, like I was some kind of predator. I wanted to explain, to say it wasn't like that, but my lawyer told me to stay quiet. The judge asked if I understood the charge. I said, yes. Then they talked about bail, and my lawyer argued for release on recognizance, said I wasn't a flight risk, that I'd lived in the same building for 12 years, that I had no priors. He didn't mention that I was the landlord. I think he was trying to protect me. The prosecutor did mention it, said the victim lived in my building, that I had access, that I'd violated trust. I felt my stomach drop. I didn't look at her. I didn't look at anyone. The judge agreed to release me, but with conditions. I'm not allowed within 50 feet of her unit. I had to hand over all keys. I'm barred from entering the east stairwell, the laundry room, and the basement, or anywhere she might be. I wear an ankle monitor now. It buzzes if I cross the invisible lines they drew around her space. I have to pay $20 per day to wear this thing, and I'll have to wear it until the trial. My lawyer says that considering the circumstances, I'll probably have a reduced sentence if they even find me guilty of anything. This is my chance to explain myself, to clear my good name. I just read what I wrote below, and it sounds crazy, but I swear it is all true. That thing really exists, and it is still out there. My first encounter with the hair clog was, well, as a clog, like in the drain. I snaked it out for Mrs. Peachtree, and there it was. I stared at it for a moment, somehow sensing it was staring back at me. I shuddered, feeling the wrongness of it. The clog dangled from the end of the wire's hook, looking almost like a wig of long, dark hair. It had all kinds of globules of slime and white fuzz and twisted tangles, and it was dripping tea-colored liquid. The odor was appalling, and I gagged on it, and it slipped from the hook. I retched into the toilet next to me, while the matted thing plopped back into the tub. There it slid, no, slithered. Yes, it slithered, into the drain and easily went in and vanished. I was dumbfounded, and I poured more drain cleaner in. I tried to fish it out with the wire, feeling around for it, but it seemed it had gone down the drain. "Everything okay in here, Mr. Thomas?" Mrs. Peachtree asked. I shivered, feeling the first moment of fear from that first encounter. I nodded, but I felt weird. I've never seen anything like that, and I don't believe in weird stuff. Later on that day, Mrs. Peachtree's daughter, Ruth, came to visit her mother. I've met Ruth before. She used to come spend the summer with her mom. She's all grown up now. Actually, I realize I shouldn't comment on her appearance, considering I now have this unfair reputation as some kind of pervert. I assure you I am not like that. Really, I'm not. Ruth came running down the hallway, screaming in bloody terror. When I caught her, she hit me, and then wild-eyed, shrieked, hysterical. "She's dead." There was this odd way she said the word dead, like she'd never said the word before in her life. Not like that, she hadn't. I went and looked, after handing Ruth over to Caroline, my same alleged voyeurism victim. She'd opened her door wearing a towel, and yes, I'd glanced at her and she'd frowned at me. But I didn't intentionally notice anything. She was wearing a too small of a towel, and when I turned, she was standing there. I didn't look at her on purpose. Nevertheless, I could tell by the look in her eyes that she was offended by my gaze. Because I did look up and meet her eyes. After she had Ruth with her, sobbing and shaking, I went to go check on Mrs. Peachtree. The retired elementary school teacher was dead and lying sprawled outside her shower, where she'd fallen face first. I thought she'd died accidentally, so I covered her up before anyone else saw her like that, throwing some towels over her butt. I'd sorta averted my gaze until I got the towels over her, and then I took a closer look and reached down to check her pulse on her neck. That is when I noticed the indented flesh of her throat, like someone had hanged her and then removed the rope, leaving only the marks. My fingers came away from her neck with a long string of slimy mucus, and it smelled of Drano, and that horrible smell from that clog I'd pulled out. For a moment I just sat there in shock and horror. Then I felt it, the utter dread of some malevolent thing watching you. I turned and looked, my face and eyes darting around until I looked up, in the corner of the shower, behind me. It was there. It looked like a foul, inky cobweb. It had tendrils of its hair spread out in all directions, holding its position through tension and stickiness. I felt terrified, because what was that thing? What was that? Then it dropped into the tub with a sick, wet sound, and it wriggled and moved to the drain. I screamed in panic, trying to move myself away from it and landing atop Mrs. Peachtree. As I struggled to get off of her, all the towels fell away and my hands were slipping over her wet skin as I tried to climb to my feet to get away from whatever that thing was. At that moment, Caroline had entered, and she only saw me all over Mrs. Peachtree, scrambling to get to my feet. "Did you see that?" I asked, my face red and sweaty. "Get off of her, you sick weirdo." Caroline snarled at me. "She's dead." I pled, as though death took priority over whatever she was freaking out about. She backed away from me, now wearing a bathrobe. "You're gross." She spat. Someone in the hallway had called for paramedics, but I am pretty sure she was all the way dead already. They wheeled her out, and Ruth was devastated. I felt awful for the poor girl. I'd seen her grow up. I knew her and her mother. Seeing her that way broke my heart. The next day, Caroline called me because her drain was clogged. I went to her apartment and she was glaring at me, but she said, "I didn't mean to yell at you. I was shocked." "It's all right. I realized that you must have seen me tumbling over her. I took a fright when I realized she was dead." I'd kept saying realized, but for some reason I'd slurred it twice and said real eyes both times. Caroline blinked, and I guess that was a Freudian slip, because I really felt like the look in her eyes was sincere. At that moment, she was seeing me for who I am, and not the creepo she thinks I am now. I started by plunging the drain in her tub because it was completely blocked. I felt some trepidation as I worried that thing was still moving through the pipes, searching for another victim to strangle. For an agonizing amount of time, I worried and felt anxiety that it would burst out of the drain and wrap around my face. I kept working, but the fear was real. I managed to get her drain unclogged, and she said it was good because she was going to be late if she didn't get a shower and go. She didn't see me out, and because I was deathly afraid of what might happen to her, I didn't actually leave her apartment. I didn't really have a plan. I was so shaken and paranoid that it might get her, that I just slammed her door like I'd left. Then I crept back towards the bathroom. When the water was running, and I heard the sound of someone stepping into the tub, the grind of the shower curtain shutting, I cracked the door. I watched just a little bit, just the thinnest, slightest crack in the door. From where I stood, I could almost see the drain hole, but she was hidden behind the rest of the door. I wasn't even tempted. I was there to make sure nothing got her. Suddenly, she started screaming in total panic. I flung open the door, but there was no hair monster attacking her. Instead, she was completely exposed and pointing at me with a mixture of terror and rage in her screams. I backed away, and the bathroom door shut and locked. She was screaming at me to get out of her apartment, and I did. I went home to my place. There I sat and waited. It wasn't long until the police arrived. Now I don't know what to do. I can't protect anyone with the monitoring. I've heard that in the adjacent buildings, there were 2 more deaths by strangulation or murder. The police have no leads. 6 more weeks, and I will be free from the monitoring and the trial. I have stockpiled drain cleaners, plumber's snake, drain auger, and motorized roto-rooter. I am going to hunt that thing down, clear my name, and avenge Mrs. Peachtree. I'm still terrified of that thing, but I'm taking my terror, and I am going to fight back and earn my freedom. You've reached the end, but the shadows haven't left you. If this story unsettled you, prove you survived. Like this video, subscribe to Spectral Shadows, and leave a comment with the part that haunted you most. The darkness is always waiting, and so are we. Until next time, don't turn off the lights.